All right. You are looking live. 28 Pittsburgh Street, fifth floor, room 306. Peace in, Isaac. Isaac, don't say peace in to Julia. He's not going to watch it. He's watching right now. Little do you know that Isaac Richards is joining us live right now. You people of little faith that think he would be delinquent and not do what he's supposed to do, well, he's going to prove you wrong. He's proving you wrong right now. You believe that?
That's funny to think about.
Isaac, Jake's got your back.
I do, yeah.
What's the YouTube channel?
HCS, all caps, home, school, and I believe that's all caps too. Remember this? Anybody remember anything about the Roaring 20s? Either from 5th grade or junior high? Give me something. Flappers. That's usually something that people remember because it's a kind of a weird word, and it's kind of like, it's one of those things that when you're young and you look at the 20s and you look at this idea of flappers, you're like, you have this attitude like, what's the big deal? Well, if you were living in the 20s, it would have been a big deal. And I want to propose to you that even if you're living in the 2020s, modesty should have been and should be then and should be now something that you're concerned about. That's just it's not really my 2 cents, it's biblical, lots of sense, that modesty is something we should be concerned about. So flappers, though, we look back and we say how they changed the fashion, and we look at what it meant by changing the fashion then compared to what the fashion would be today, right? Like today, there's this one young lady that's always at the waiting for the bus on my way from my house to go to school, and I'm like, what? Because today the jeans, it wasn't just like the style. You got like a couple holes in your jeans, right? It was like the hole went from here, and then there was a thread of jeans, and then there was another hole. And I'm like, what is that? That's gone beyond like the style of having holes in your jeans to like, are you even wearing jeans? What is that? So, like, I don't know. I was thinking it's cold outside too. Yes. Oh yeah. The only one should be on is the one over you. So flappers are certainly part of the 20s. You can turn the middle one off too. It's a cultural change, right? There's all kinds of changes going on in the 20s. One of them's cultural, and a big symptom of that is flappers. Young ladies going against traditional teaching, maybe rebelling against their fathers or whatever, or society, by saying, I'm going to cut my hair, because, long-standing, even, most denominations of, I don't know, I don't want to get too scriptural about it, but, the woman's hair and her beauty and all that. So we're going to cut our hair because we feel like it. Dad doesn't want us to get our hair cut or put too excessive makeup on. Well, we're going to do it anyway. We're supposed to be wearing our dresses down to cover our legs and be modest. Well, we're going to make it so our dresses are above our knees. And maybe all of it wasn't rebellion. Maybe some of it was just, hey, that's the trend. That's how people are dressing now. But a lot of it was probably driven by rebellion against someone, whether it's against their own fathers or traditional biblical teaching, whatever it was. But that's a big cultural shift, right? What else besides flappers? Okay, speakeasies. Remembers that? Speakeasies were the result of Prohibition. Which amendment was that? 18th. So the 18th Amendment banned the sale, transportation, the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol. By the way, did you notice it didn't ban the consumption of alcohol? Did you notice I said Prohibition banned the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol, but it didn't ban the consumption of alcohol? Why is that? Isn't that weird? Because this is America. And the idea that the government would tell you what you can or can't put, wait, this is America. The idea that the government can tell you what you can or can't put in your body is really against Americans' principle. Wait. You understand why I'm puzzled? Like they couldn't pass a law that says you can't drink alcohol. It's America. Just like going back to pre-America. Some of you might remember this. Back in the days in Scotland and England, who were really the forerunners of individual liberty, and that's kind of where our society grew from. But they used to have this thing called a red flag law. And the people that were trying to introduce automobiles into society, well, at first, we didn't have combustible engines. We had big steam engines, right? So people were trying to show that, hey, we're building our technology. Check out my new machine. No more horses. We're going to have these machines that can take us to and fro. But the only way they would operate, they'd have to have this huge tank for the water for the steam engine. So it was big, loud, clunky. So the government of England and Great Britain, they couldn't pass a law that's like said, hey, you're not allowed to drive that kind of car. So they passed a law that said you can only go 2 miles an hour. And when you were driving one of those cars, someone had to be out in front of you with a red flag. Well, who's going to want that car then? Right? So they couldn't pass a law saying you couldn't have it. We'll just pass laws that make it so that you don't want it, or that will restrict you having it. No one's going to want a car that someone has to stand in front of you with a red flag as you drive down the street. So we can't pass a law that says, hey, we're going to come into your house, and if we see you drinking wine, you're going to be, no, can't do that in America. But what we'll do is we'll pass laws that say you can't manufacture it, and you can't sell it, and you can't transport it. Kind of crazy, right? Seemingly. But the idea behind that was, this is America. This is where we're an individual liberty. The government can't dictate what you can or can't put in your bodies. Here we are 100 years later, dealing with the government trying to mandate what you can and can't put in your body. Strange how history repeats itself, isn't it? Anyway, what else besides speakeasies? Speakeasies were places where, hey, you're not allowed to do it. So if you come to the ice cream shop and you see the magic word, they'll show you if you go in the back where there's a place to get alcohol. Right? Speakeasy. What else? Yeah.
A lot of the police and law forces were corrupt.
Yeah. Well, because we banned an activity, a behavior, alcohol, and it's an activity that people were just going to do anyway, it led to a lot of corruption. It led to a lot of crime, which led to things like the mafia, mobsters. Who's the most famous? Anybody remember that guy's name from Chicago? Al Capone. It led to a lot of crime because people were going to do it anyway. So then police, whose job it is to enforce the crime, well, they don't get paid. Did you know police don't get paid? Sadly, right? They don't get paid. They don't become rich being a police officer. So if someone that's making a lot of money by illegally selling and distributing alcohol comes up to you and says, hey, coming up, slide your $100 bill to look the other way, wouldn't it? So there was corruption with police because, and you might even as a police officer individually think, this is crazy, these laws that we're passing. So you're already against the law in the first place, but it's your job to enforce the law, right? But if you're enticed with someone giving you money to look the other way, that obviously could happen. We'd like to think love makes the world go round, right, Seth? Unfortunately, it's money. And that's why the Bible tells us that it's not money, but it's the love of money. So if you're enticed by that lure of, hey, got an extra $100 for you, to look the other way, kind of easy to do. What else? We have, the big things were really The flappers and the speakeasies are usually the first two things people think of when they think of the Roaring Twenties, and those are cultural things. But what else was happening? What else was happening that, okay, if you didn't drink alcohol, that didn't really affect you. And if you didn't have a rebellious young lady in your house, that didn't really affect you. But what affected everybody? Right? What do we know about the economics of 1920s? Sid?
It was just coming off of the war,
Okay.
so they were trying to like get more of their manufacturing and stuff.
Okay. So was the economy in the 20s good or bad? What's the nickname of the decade?
Good. Because then it led to the
Good.
Depression.
I mean, it started off bad, but it ends up very good. In fact, it's roaring. The 20s economy ends up roaring through the decade until, what happens at the end? You know the rest of the story, right? What's the 30s? What two-word phrase do we use to describe the 30s? After we call it the roaring 20s, party, let's roar, everybody's having a blast, the economy's doing great, more people are getting rich, it's a party, it's actually more fun to go and party, drink alcohol when it's illegal. Isn't that weird? Isn't that human nature? It's more exciting when it's illegal. When you're, not you, of course, but when your age group is 17 and someone has alcohol, oh, that's way more fun because it's illegal. You're doing it illegal and you're getting away with it. Human nature. Am I right or wrong, right? So, what was the question? What was the comment? Where was I going with that? I just lost my train of thought.
What was the 30s?
Oh, so yeah, it's a big party. And then we know the 30s are described by the Great Depression because that party is going to come to a abrupt halt. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take you through a big list of, we're doing this a little different this chapter, of a vocabulary list. So I have all those things that in a skeletal sense, and then we'll do the notes because I'm trying to get done by middle of next week, almost done anyway, because we're not going to be together. Well, I guess we will be together next Wednesday morning. We're here till noon. Anybody not going to the game? Normalcy becomes a word that's used a lot. In fact, the one that's going to be president, elected in 1920, so he'll become president in 21, exactly 100 years ago, right? His name was Warren G. Harding. And what was his campaign slogan? What did he run on? He ran on the notion that America, we want to return to normalcy. The war's been over for 2 years now. Can we finally just get back to normal? Can we just focus on America? Let's get back to normal. Remember when we tried to stay out of that European war? Let's focus on what we need to do here in America. And they called that a return to normalcy. And then we had this. We'll talk about this again. This is going to happen like 30 years after this, and it's going to happen in a bigger way. It's called a Red Scare. How many knew that red was the color associated with communism? How many knew that? Like you may have heard this phrase before, Red China. Have you ever heard that phrase before? Because red's the color we associate with communism. I guess it's because red is a color we associate with power, and communism is about government power over people. So the Red Scare. What happened after World War I? By the way, Dina, that's not a swear word, Bolshevism. Remember when you were in 5th grade and thought I was swearing when I said Bolsheviks? Bolshevik Revolution. What country did that happen in? There was a country that we didn't make a big deal about it during World War I that in the middle of the war said, that's it, we quit. They literally had a change in government, such an extreme change in government called a revolution, where the communists came in and took over, and the communists said, that's it, we're done. They just left the war. They made an agreement with Germany, hint, on the Eastern Front and left the war? What country was taken over by the Bolsheviks? Russia. So what was happening after the war was a lot of Europe and then America, the Western world, was really worried about this idea of communism spreading and people coming to America with this idea and trying to institute Bolshevism in America. Usually through labor unions. Remember we talked about in the progressive era, labor unions, and who was that guy that kept running for president? Labor. Eugene B. Debs. So we've always been concerned about, ever since really Karl Marx and his teachings, socialism / Marxism / communism becoming part of the American landscape. So there was a Red Scare because communists were becoming violent. They were infiltrating labor unions especially, and were literally using bombs. So I usually stop at this point and say, you know how it seems crazy the world you're growing up in, and America's so divided and divisive? It's been like that cyclically a long time. So we'll come out of this too. I really believe that. Then you had isolationism. That was the last line in your notes from last chapter about World War I. America has turned inward and become isolationist. Let's avoid those foreign affairs. Let's not get entangled in alliances that really will make it so that we'll be obligated to get involved in a war again. Let them work it out themselves, just like we tried to do for the first 3 years of World War I. We want to get back to that. In fact, it goes so far as we're even going to raise tariffs again, because it's okay if we limit trade with other countries. If we limit trade with other countries, we have less interest. We have less interest in what's going on over there, right? There's enough American manufacturers and enough American consumers that we can pretty much have a self-contained economy. Why do we need? Think about it. Why do we need to trade with other countries? We have 330 million Americans. We've got the greatest technology in the world. Could we, if we wanted, today, be totally isolationist? Couldn't we have a functioning economy with just we Americans? Probably, right? Why don't we? Do you ever think about that? There is a reason. Or don't we? Yeah?
Debt.
What kind of debt? Because one of the problems we have is when it comes to debt is a trade debt or deficit with people like countries like China. Like we're actually in debt because when it comes to trade, they make way more money off the trade than we do. So that would be an argument for isolationism. Like, why are we doing this? In fact, what did the last president do? Trump pushed for higher tariffs. Right? Is there a reason that we don't just not trade with other countries? Come on, think. What would be a reason that we don't just, why not just be American? Forget whatever's going on over there. Yeah.
I'm probably wrong, but maybe it could be like another case of war and alliances.
Yeah, what about it? We're not part of it. We're going to isolate ourselves, so we don't have to worry about it because.
Well, yeah, but maybe it probably helps.
Helps with relationships?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? One of the ideas behind international trade is, go back to Wilson's idea, the League of that you're constantly communicating. You're developing friendly relationships through trade. That's a way to get to world peace. One reason. All right, I don't want to go on too long about that. That was not part of the plan. But you get it that America became more isolationist. And the first president of our country, the father of America, George Washington, in his farewell address, gave a strong admonition, warned Americans in the future, do not get entangled in foreign affairs. This guy, Albert Einstein. This is included in our study of the Roaring Twenties because this revolution in science. Don't ask me to stand here and really give you a thorough explanation of the theory of relativity because I can't. I know, like, within the theory of relativity, it almost sounds like revelation. There's special relativity, there's general relativity, something to do with gravity. But the big thing is, it's a pun intended, quantum leap beyond what we thought we knew about science. Science up to the 20s, before Einstein, was basically based on, it was called mechanical science. Hey, this is what we can observe, this is what he's talking about things theoretically, the theory of relativity. He was talking about things theoretically that we didn't really know because we couldn't hear it, see it, touch it. Think about atomic science. It's only recently that we've developed microscopes strong enough to even let us see a glimpse of what an atom really is. But we've had atomic theory around a long time. How did that happen? How did people like Einstein, that the things that we couldn't even see, how they operate? Make sense? So this theory revolutionizes science. And it's going to revolutionize then technology. And technology is going to be part of the party, the Roaring Twenties. Technology is going to bring things into people's homes that they never had before, make their lives more easy and convenient. Everybody's happier when there's less work to do, right? Elise? The Ku Klux Klan. There is a re-emergence of hate-filled people. And by the way, notice that they've expanded their hate. During Reconstruction, the Ku Klux was born out of hateful hearts of Southern white men who wanted to maintain their superiority over the black man, even though slavery was outlawed. So they formed this group and they became very politically active in their communities to keep the black man down. Well, they got, during Reconstruction, quickly, the federal government arrested enough of them and almost killed them. But there was an ember there. So by the time we get to the 20s, the next generation of race-filled, hate-filled racists rise up. And now they've expanded their target. They're not just targeting blacks. They're targeting Catholics. They're targeting Jews. They're targeting, this is the really sick part. Under the guise of Christianity, and what they would say, all they're trying to do is maintain a pure society. The ills and the immorality that's going around, that's really, they would say that really was their goal. Kind of sick, right? And so they would go to church on Sunday. And what? Go lynch a person on Monday? Because their color, because they have more melanin in their skin, makes their skin darker? I don't get it. I really don't get it. And then, of course, Catholics would be part of the target because it was teaching something other than evangelical Christianity. Isn't it kind of weird? Like, and if you ask them, they would say they were Christian. But yet, how was it manifesting with all this hate? So Sadly, they rise again. Fundamentalism, this kind of goes with that. A lot of these people, unfortunately, again, so then that leads to what's that do of Christ in a culture, right? We that really just want to love people and witness and spread Christ's message, the gospel, to people and loving truth. The message of Christ to do gets marred by people like this. So this whole idea of fundamentalism gets a thumbs down from a lot of people in society because, oh no, that's too extreme. You want to create a society that will return to just biblical authority. What do you want, a theocracy? So then this gets a bad rap. How is fundamentalism wrong? How is trying to teach people to live by the authority of Scripture ever a bad thing? A lot of people in society reject it. 20s right here. I mean, if you just think about what the word speculate means, it means, let me think about that. I'm going to think that I'm going to take an idea and speculate on it in the future. How's that going to turn out? Well, and when it comes to the economy and the stock market, speculation means that you're looking at the price of a stock and you're going, that last month, the price of that stock was $2. And then this month it's $3. And then last year it was only 50 cents. So the price keeps going up. It's going to keep going up. I'm going to buy it. Don't know anything about the company other than the price of the stock keeps going up. No, and I don't care. All I know is the price keeps going up, so I'm buying. Wait, do we know anything about the company? Do we know like their employment? Do we know their 5-year plan? The basic foundation that's going to allow them to continue to grow like they're growing? Is there a reason behind all of this growth in their stock price? No, I don't care. I just know that the price keeps going up, so I'm buying. The roaring 1920s. There's a lot of people, if you pay attention, I'm not an economist or expert, but I listen to a lot of people about a lot of things. And there's a lot of people that are like, the stock market last 6 years went over 30,000 last year. We changed presidents and everybody's a little worried about it keeps rising. What's causing the stock market to keep, what's the fundamentals of the economy that warrant the stock prices to keep going? Who cares? All I know is that if I buy it and I sell it next month for more, I make more money. Because people are speculating. They're expecting it. So there's people out there like, hey, everybody, time out, slow down. Remember what happened in the 20s? Big bubble burst because the stock price wasn't matching what the company was really worth and what the company was all about. All of a sudden, the big bubble burst and we had the Great Depression. So there's people saying, hey, if you're buying stock just based on the price keeps going up, let's look at inflation. Let's look at employment, unemployment. Usually if economic news comes out and it says that and inflation's high, the stock market is not, but it is. Because of speculation. And where did it lead 100 years ago? Those who do not remember the past are destined to repeat it. Do we have to, does it always mean it's going to work out that way? No. I'm not an expert. I'm not telling you that there's doom ahead. I'm not saying there's a Great Depression ahead. I'm just saying that I have heard people, and people are writing books, and people are doing podcasts, and people are economists, people that are experts, not me, saying, hey, we got to be careful here because, it's called a bubble. What happens when the bubble bursts? Installment buying. this becomes a big thing. It's called buying on credit. I'm gonna venture to say that 100% of the people in this room, your family has a credit card. Or if they don't have a credit card, they have some kind of debt, some kind of credit they have with a bank somewhere for a mortgage or a car, where they have gotten money from an institution to buy something like, hey, homeowner, yes, okay, but really are you? You're not really technically the homeowner until you've paid all the money to the bank who technically owns the home until you pay it off. Then you do get free and clear the deed to that home, the title to that home, because you bought it with the promise that you're going to make. You're not going to give the person $200,000 for a house because you don't just happen to have that cash laying around. But what you do have, you have regular income coming in that you can afford to pay every month. That's how it works, right? This is a new thing. This is 100 years ago. That's how America's been living, but only for the last 100 years. Before that, there would be, you ever seen Little House on the Prairie? Put it on, you go to the local store and they keep a tab of how much you owe. So then when your harvest comes in, you pay them. So I'm not saying there wasn't credit before that, but this explosion in installment buying where you go to the store and you buy a big item. Like imagine in the 20s when you first got your first refrigerator. Think about it, like what life was like before you even had a refrigerator or a washing machine. And now you're able to get one because you don't have to pay the hundreds of dollars right up front. You can go to the store and get the item and pay a little bit at a time over maybe a period of 2 years, or a house period of 30 years. That's how it works, right? What's that M word? Your parents pay a mortgage, and typically one of the most popular is 30 years. Your parents buy the house and they have 30 years to pay it off in small installments. Bank wins because they charge you, who said it? Interest, right? And you're willing to do that because you don't have $200,000 to just give to someone to buy the house, or you don't even have $30,000 to give someone for a car. So you're willing to pay it in smaller amounts. They're willing to lend it to you because you're going to pay back a little more than you pay that you owe, a little at a time. Jake, I hope you're not sleeping. That's a new thing in the 20s. And then we already talked about a big part of the 20s is prohibition. And that's going to lead, unfortunately, I hesitate to say this because I think we do too much of this in society. We blame other things and people on things that we do. I mean, hey, why was there so much crime in the 20s? Because of prohibition. Oh, so because they passed a law and you couldn't control yourself, you had no self-control, that the reason that Al Capone and the mobsters came to be is because there was prohibition. They didn't want alcohol in society. So that's an excuse for crime. And last one, something we also mentioned, speakeasies. Because alcohol was outlawed, it had to go underground, had to go in the shadows, had to go into the dark. Therefore, we call it the black market. The shadows, you can't see. Speakeasy. Don't tell anybody. Like everybody wouldn't find out, right? War. Party. Wonder if this is going to be the roaring 20s. Think about it. Return to normalcy. We come out of the pandemic. Party time. 100 years later.
We'll have a Great Depression.
Hope not.
going all the way to Guatemala today.
Yep.
Dirty lunch.
Come on, Annabelle.
Gotta be back by geometry.
Yeah. Good. Favorite class.